Hey, Fountain Springs Church, we have an incredible treat for you today. We added a new member to our team, Ryan Callahan. He's our new student ministry pastor, and you get to meet him today because he's going to preach today. But before he starts preaching, I wanted you to get to know him a little bit more. And so he and I had a conversation. We just sat down and talked about the process of him joining our team, but even more about what he sees in our community and the value of students. So I want you to sit back before he gets at preaching. I want you to listen to his heart, the words he shared. It was a great conversation. Take a listen. Ryan, I remember when we started this whole process about 10 months ago. We even got a company involved. A lot of times, if we're going to hire someone, there's multiple places around the United States that help us find folks to join the team. And I remember we hired a company and we began looking because we wanted someone who would be our student ministry pastor and would believe in this generation, that would really not just want a role in a church, but would see value in this current generation. And I remember hiring this company, so we're using them. But then outside of them, I get this email from you directly. And I'm like, oh, cool, here's your resume. This is awesome. And your resume was like, wow, this guy's an overachiever. This is good. And so look through it. And I remember we responded to you, saying, hey, we're working with a company trying to find this position. So can you send your information to this company? And a part of me is like, I sure hope you make it through there. and I remember you gave your information to the company, kind of joined up with them, and not long after, this company tells us, hey, we've got a great recommendation for you, this Ryan Callahan guy. Mm-hmm. And we're like, I've seen that name before. And so you had to do a full loop through, which kudos to you, man. Some people would give up and not want to go through that. But man, we are excited to have you on our team. And I mean that. I think what you get to do as a part of our team is going to have influence for years upon years. But I'm curious. I think we need to get to know you a little bit more. What have you been doing pre-joining the team of Fountain Springs Church? What have you been up to?
For the last decade, I've been in youth ministry. I actually started my journey as a minister in South Africa. And I really got a heart for youth ministry, for orphans, for kids that were in hard times. Mm. And God really planted a calling in my heart. And I came back to the States after trying to stay and do mission work. God really had a different door open, and I began the journey of stateside work in youth ministry. And so got married and have kids now. And so it's just been a really cool thing that we've been working through. But it's an honor to be here at Fountain Springs and to continue on in that calling that God's placed in my heart.
I mean, I've been to South Africa, South Dakota. They're pretty much the same.
Basically.
I mean, I don't see much difference in there. So yeah, I know that you have a wonderful bride. When did you guys meet? How'd that happen? How'd you get married?
Yeah. God just graced me more than everybody else.
That's all of our stories.
Yes. It was a blind date situation. They set us up, and yeah, it was crazy. It was over coffee, of course, because that's the way anyone who's Christian should meet.
I agree with
you. we sat down and we began to talk about orphans and widows and this giant calling that God placed in our heart. And I went I have to marry you tomorrow. So we did.
Did you tell her that?
Kind of, a week later. It was.
Wow.
It went really fast.
So you've got kiddos, yep. And that's a great story. What'd you do?
So about 2 years into marriage, we started to go are we supposed to move and do orphanage work, or are we supposed to open our home to foster care, or what really are we supposed to do now? We believe that God's placed that in our marriage as kind of a uniting mission. And so we began to pray about it, and we started the process of fostering, and we got a little girl, and then subsequently her brother, and fought for them for 3 years, and legally adopted them right before we came. So
that's it gives me goosebumps, man. That's awesome. Both of your hearts, you and Rebecca, are that was a part of it. I remember having breakfast with you guys, and one thing that got conveyed not just in what you said, but you just kind of oozed out of you both, that you genuinely care about people.
Yeah.
And love having you on the team. So you are not from Rapid City, South Dakota, which I wasn't either. We're about to have been here for about 10 years. But you're new to the church, so what thoughts and emotions and experiences stuck on you as you began to, I think it's safe to say the word investigate on if you're gonna relocate to Rapid City and do something?
Yeah, I remember my wife, we had a conversation early on, like, what is God moving us towards? Because I had quit a job, a really great job, but I knew I was supposed to not walk away from the church. But there was an in-between time when she was working as a teacher and I was trying to find work, and I was getting frustrated, honestly. And I remember saying, like, if God gives me full-time work, will you stay home? Because that was her desire. And so we began that national search kind of on the other side of the coin. And I remember talking to 9 churches in all these different areas. And I remember God really whittling it down for different reasons. He whittled it down to kind of 2 churches, one on the East Coast and Rapid City in Fountain Springs. And I remember we were gonna take a trip to that church on the East Coast, and it was a week before we came up here and we sat down with the pastors, we sat down with you, and I remember sitting down and hearing like the passion and the heart for the Black Hills. And I remember God like going, this is for you. And I went, can you tell my wife that? Because it was Rapid City, it was South Dakota, we're coming from San Antonio, Texas, like this massive city where all our family lives, to almost like a missionary lifestyle, like smaller place to live, like it's gonna be freezing, like all of these changes. And so I remember sitting in the car in between some of these meetings and God continuing to kind of go like, this is where you're gonna live. So open your eyes to what's here. And just getting like excited about it, but not wanting to get too excited, because if Rebecca says no, like we're staying, because that's what marriage is. It's not, we've got to be on the same page with a move like this. And so in sitting with you, I heard the heart of, there was 2 things that I heard that were very, very clear. It was authentic voice and it was vulnerability. It was this willingness to sit down and share deep, dark secrets. You didn't know me from anybody. And you told me about things that you had messed up and things in ministry that I had messed up, but you talked about grace in a way that really like lit me on fire. I was like, I've got to be under his leadership and I want to go where he's going.
Cool. So you got the job.
I got the job.
You've moved.
Yep.
And now you are a student ministry pastor. Why? What's in your heart? What has God even put in your mind about the Black Hills, about students in particular? Yeah. What gets you excited? I just want to hear about it.
For sure. When we moved here, at first I was like, the Black Hills is a beautiful area. And I had this vision that God would allow us to touch the 7,000 students that are here. Man, that's awesome. Like if we could have those students in a church, not just Fountain Springs, but like any church, and they were hearing the love of Christ and they were being transformed by that word, like what would this state look like? Like what would the impact that we could do outside of the state be?
I've listened to you preach a few times already on Wednesday nights with the students, and you are exuding, just pouring out to them, and I'm seeing them understand this is not, they're not in a waiting phase of life or a holding pattern. You're teaching them, and this is what I love, because, well, my kids, one's in it already, and others will come through it, that the teenage years, the student years are not a waiting time. And I think it's one of the most critical stages of life. And I'm glad that you're leading our students.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I believe that this is the church. And I believe that if we don't give students an opportunity to be the church right now, what is the church in 10 years? What is the church in 15 years? And so I'm right there with you.
Cool. I'm excited, man. I'm glad you're on the team. You've already added a ton. You're awesome to be around, and the best, I think, is going to be yet to come, be awesome. So as a church, we commit to you to walk with you, to support you, even financially, to make sure that students get to be a part of what they need to be a part of. You are not a separate part of the church. You are the church, and we're going to help you and the students become what they need to be. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I think you probably got what I got. You got to see his heart. Ryan is a great guy, and he's going to lead well. But now is the time for us to hear from God through Ryan. So church, come on. Let's give a warm welcome to our new student ministry pastor, Ryan Callahan.
Thanks a million for that. I really appreciate it, and we are honored, my wife and I and kids, we're honored to be a part of this church. I want you to know that we're extremely relational, and so after the services, I'd love to get to know you. If your family has a student that isn't going to youth ministry, this is a perfect opportunity for us to meet and hopefully get them involved in what we're doing. We love this church, and we're excited to see what God does through it. We've been in a series called Relationship Goals. And for the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at 3 different ideas. The first idea is this: how you prepare. Todd actually spent some time talking about the single life and how to maximize that. And he spent time saying that if you're not going to get married, it's best to maximize your singleness no matter where you're headed with that singleness. He said that even in marriage, maximizing your singleness with each other was very important. The second week, Pastor David looked at how you prioritize. And there's 2 ideas that he talked about. He said, what are you going to run from and what are you going to cling to? And he talked to us about how important it was to create boundaries and guardrails in our marriage and to prioritize what our marriage would look like. This week, we're going to look at how you pursue your marriage. And the question we're going to try to answer is, what does it look like to have a successful marriage 10, 15, 20 years from now? Because if you're married in the room, it's important that you know that that's what we're looking at. No one goes into marriage hoping that it will fail. Every single one of us goes into marriage hoping it will succeed. And the idea today is, how will we continue to pursue our spouse so that we will succeed 20 years from now? I want to start with a story about a man named Matt Emmons. He is a decorated Olympian, as you can see, and he's also incredibly good at competition when it comes to shooting. Now, in these competitions, it's interesting because you have to move from target to target to target to target. See, it was 2004 when Matt Emmons was in first place. It was his second round of the competitions. He's already scored a gold medal. He's looking for his second one. He's in the late stages of this particular shooting competition, and he comes to the last target. He looks up at the scoreboard and sees that he's in first place by a wide margin. Nobody can really touch him at this point. He goes into his last shot like he has every other shot. He drops down into the scope, he breathes, he looks at the bullseye, breathes again, click, boom, hits the target. He knows he's hit a perfect bullseye, and he stands, as he raises his hands, he looks at the Jumbotron to see that his name is dropping down the leader list. See, yes, he hit a perfect bullseye, but he hit a perfect bullseye on the wrong target. The reality is, and I want you to know this, and this is true, you just know this intuitively, but I want to make a point by saying this. A bullseye on the wrong target impresses no one. No one in here is celebrating Matt Emmons at that point. They're looking at him going, what happened? See, this story isn't about the Olympics, although we all love the Olympics. We love watching the Olympics. We love participating and cheering on our favorite competitors. The reality is, this is more about relationships than it is about anything else. In relationships, the pursuit of the goal of gold medal is high priority on our list. We chase after it with all the energy, enthusiasm, and everything else, and we plan and we prepare and we do all the things we need to do to win gold, to hit the target. Somewhere along the way, maybe it's 5 years in, maybe it's 10 years in, we eventually get comfortable, we get complacent. We just sort of take the breaths because we know that's the muscle memory to hit the target, but we're not really sure what target we're hitting. See, we'll hit a bullseye, we'll bring flowers on that perfect day. And we'll come in expecting this response from our spouse because we brought flowers yet again, and we don't see them cheer us on like they used to. We don't see the excitement in their voice when we say, hey, let's go on a date. They're just not as excited as they once were. And it's because we have become complacent. This isn't just for spouses. Today, this message is really about relationships in general. See, in relationships, when we're in the friendship phase of a relationship, we're super excited as well, and we do the same thing. Over time, we get complacent and comfortable, and we hit a bullseye on the wrong target. See, there's really 3 easy steps when it comes to this, because I know you agree with me right off the bat that we've hit the bullseye on a wrong target because we've felt that in our relationships. We felt comfortable and complacent, and you go, Ryan, I agree with you 100%. In fact, my marriage right now needs this message. The reality is there's 3 easy practical things we can do to change our marriage today. Not tomorrow, not later, not 2 years from now, like today. If we actually practice these 3 things, our marriage will succeed 20 years from now. And the first idea is this: check your perspective. I once was in a leadership position where I was uber frustrated. I was really angry. I was mad. I felt like no one was following me where we were headed. I felt no desire to follow my boss. I was just in this place where I was just angry. And I remember calling a mentor friend of mine, and we sat down at a coffee shop, and he listened to me. I got behind my side of the table, and I just started spewing all these things out. I was like word vomiting on him. And he stopped me halfway through the conversation, and he grabs the coffee cup in front of me and puts it in front of me and says, Ryan, what's on my side of the cup? And I was amped up with emotion, and so I was irritated that he would first interrupt me. Secondly, that he would ask me what was on the side of his cup, knowing that I had worked at Starbucks. Everyone knows what's on the other side of the cup if you've been a part of Starbucks before. It's the drink pattern, right? So I start guessing and assuming and doing all these things to answer him, and he says, that's an assumption. You don't know what's on the side of my cup until you actually walk around the table and sit down and see it from my perspective. See, the reality is he was 100% right. He hit me right between the eyes with it, and I was mad because he knew something that I didn't know, that if I actually applied it, I would be a better leader. See, this is also not just about leadership. This is about relationship. See, there are needs on your side of the cup, and there are needs on the other side of the cup, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a boss-employee relationship. There are needs that need to be met on your side. There are needs that need to be met on the other side. And to really, truly fight and pursue the marriage or the relationship like it needs to be pursued, you have to go, okay, great, I know my needs. What are their needs? And I need to walk around the cup to ask them those questions. See, in marriage, it's very clear. There's marriage experts out there. Most of them are named Gary. And that's a little inside joke for those that read. But there's one of those Garys had this to say. Verses. Okay. Nope. I just need to look at the screen. I jumped one slide, so verses always come first. That's how I wrote it. Sure. I want to get it right.
Hey, Fountain Springs Church, we have an incredible treat for you today. We one's in it already, and others will come through it, that the teenage years, the student years are not a week
right now.
Yet to come, to walk with you, to support you, even financially, to make sure that students get to be a part of what they need to be a part of. You are not a separate part of the church. You are the church, and we're going to help you and the students become what they need to be. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I think you probably got what I got. You got to see his heart. Ryan is a great guy, and he's going to lead well. But now is the time for us to hear from God through Ryan. So church, come on. Let's give a warm welcome to our new student ministry pastor, Ryan Callahan.
Thanks a million. My family, my wife, and my kids, we're just honored to be here, and we just thank you for welcoming us like this. Thanks to Pastor David and everybody on the team. I want you to know we're relational, and so after the service, I'd love to talk to you. If your kids, if they're in the student age 6th through 12th grade, I'd love to meet them, get them plugged in. If you're looking to volunteer, we'd love more volunteers, so we're always looking to do that. It's just an honor to be here, and I'm excited to get to know you and see where God takes us through this journey. We've been in a series called Relationship Goals, where we've really looked at 3 ideas. We're going to end today. I want to take you back through the 3 ideas that we looked at. The first week, we looked at how you prepare for marriage, where Todd actually preached a sermon on singleness and learning how to maximize our singleness. The second week, Pastor David looked at the ideas of how you prioritize, where he talked about what you run from and what you cling to in marriage. He said prioritization has to do a lot with the boundaries and the barriers we put in place. We prioritize our marriage when those boundaries are in the right place. This week we're going to be looking at how you pursue marriage. For those that are in the room today, the question that we're going to be answering really is, how does your marriage become successful 10, 15, and 20 years from now? Some of you have already kind of unlocked those ideas. Others of you are looking with anticipation on how to have a successful marriage. So today we're going to look at those ideas together. I'd love to start with a story by a guy named Matt Emmons. Matt Emmons is an Olympian. Obviously, he's really good at what he does with this weapon. In each of the competitions that Matt is a part of, he goes through the rigorous preparation of learning to shoot the right way. Well, it was 2004, and I was watching the Olympics, and I was watching this Matt Emmons, and man, he had already won his first gold of the competition, and he was looking for his second gold. And so he's in the midst of this competition, and I'm watching, and I'm going, whoa, this dude is amazing. He's hitting bullseye, 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 bullseye. He goes from last all the way to first. By a wide margin, he's in first. And it's his last target. All he has to do is hit the target to win gold for the second time. And so he prepares just like he had before. He gets in the pocket. He breathes the right way. He looks into the bullseye. He breathes again. Boom. Hits the target perfectly. Perfect bullseye. You can see his emotion as he stands to almost celebrate the success of another gold medal. And as he turns to the Jumbotron, he realizes that he's missed the target. He's hit a bullseye on the wrong target. And here, everyone goes from jubilee to, oh no, he went to last place. The reality is we watch a story like this, and it's captivating because we see someone who's incredibly successful at hitting the target, and he's made one of the biggest errors ever. See, you and I both know this. A bullseye on the wrong target impresses no one. No one is impressed with Matt because he hit a bullseye on the wrong target. And yet, it's really hard for us to imagine that this has anything to do with us. See, we shoot at targets all the time in relationships and in work, and we have these goals that we put before us in January, and by February, we sort of lose the power to keep shooting at the target. See, this story isn't about the Olympics, although we all love to watch the Olympics. This story is more about how we prepare to hit a target. It's about relationships. See, you and I, each day of our lives, we set up to hit a target in relationship. Whether it's a marriage or it's a boss employee or a friendship, we get in the pocket, we get used to a certain way of relating to people. And we might hit the target, and we get better at hitting the target until there's one point in the relationship where we stop aiming at the right target and we actually hit a bullseye on the wrong target. And then all of a sudden we step back and we go, whoa, what just happened? What we felt at the beginning of the relationship, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the run towards the goal is now all of a sudden suppressed because we've missed it, and it really just kind of gives us a lack of energy to try again. See, we all experience this. This isn't just a new thing that one person, everybody in the room knows exactly what I'm talking about if you've chased after a relationship before. The pursuit of relationship is work, and it's hard. And the reality is that we're aiming at this target and we want to hit it, but we have to take a couple steps back. When you look at these ideas, when you hear this story, what you're thinking most likely is, I agree with you. I have become complacent or comfortable in my relationship. I don't have the same drive to get to know this person. And the reality is that this message has been shaped. It's 3 practical steps that you can take to actually hit the bullseye on the right target. But it's really not about that. It's about you getting the drive and the passion back to actually shoot at the target again. The first idea we're going to look at tonight is check your perspective. It's important that Matt Emmons, when he gets in the pocket, he looks at the perspective, he looks at the right target. If he's looking at the wrong target, he's going to miss it every time. I was in a leadership position where I was frustrated. I was just so angry. I remember calling a mentor friend of mine, and we sat down over coffee. And I remember vomiting all these things on him, just words about people and how they wouldn't follow me in my leadership and how I was so distracted and mad and angry at the lack of followership. In the midst of that vomiting, he grabs my coffee cup and he puts it in the middle of the table and he says, Ryan, what's on the side of my cup? And I looked down, and immediately, because I've worked at Starbucks before, any baristas in the house know this, the drink boxes are on the other side. I can just guess what's on your side of the cup. And so I did so, and he says, assumption. You're assuming what's on my side of the cup. And that's your problem, Ryan. What's the only way that you're going to find out what's on my side of the cup? And I looked at him and I said, with frustration, obviously there's so many emotions wrapped up. And I'm like, this guy just nailed me between the eyes. And I don't even like this conversation anymore. But he goes, you got to walk around to see my side of the cup. You're not going to know what's on my side of the cup unless you take the time and the effort to check your perspective. The Bible actually says it this way. It says it in 2 separate places. It says, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. The second verse, same writer, different people. Don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others. See, the Bible is narrating the same story. It's saying there are needs on this side of the cup that I am unaware of unless I drop down and say, it's not about me and what I can receive. It's about what I can give. And I have to get out from underneath my needs. And I have to walk around the table to see the other person's needs. There are really, really smart people that study marriages, and they go through all of these research and psychology sessions. They do all of these things, and they put works together that we get to read. And I'm a big-time reader, and so in one of these studies, I began to read the needs of a woman versus a man. And I'd love to share that with you. 4 greatest needs of a woman are emotional and physical security, regular and meaningful communication, non-sexual touch, and romance. See, these needs are on her side of the cup. And if I assume that I know what those needs are without actually asking her, does this fit the needs that you have right now, then I'm lost. I actually am just guessing at what the target is, and I'm going to miss it every time. But if I look at this and I go, I wonder where I'm lacking today. Which one would you pick? I know which ones I would pick. Regular and meaningful communication is often one that I miss. Out of this list, if I look at it, I go, man, most of the time I'm communicating with my wife, it's a text message about what we need to get done. Too often we don't meet I'm not meeting the need of my wife when all I'm doing is communicating something that just needs to be exchanged information-wise. The only way to regularly and meaningfully communicate with her is to sit down and actually take the time to get beyond all the stuff we need to get done and actually have a meaningful conversation. How was your day? What are you struggling with? What are you going through? See, it's a lot of questions and a lot of opportunity for her to say things, and I have to be in that moment. I have to learn to listen to what she's saying, and that will help me gain a better perspective on her end of the table. Now, let's flip the roles. Let's look at what a man needs. There are 3 greatest needs of a man according to this really, really smart guy. To feel respected and admired, loved and desired, and to enjoy sexual intimacy regularly. See, it's interesting to me, if we put these side by side, you can see right away that a woman needs non-sexual touch, a man needs sexual touch. Can you see how these conflict with one another? Yeah. Each one of these actually, in some ways, conflicts with one another, and that's why we see the tension in relationship. If your spouse sits on that side of the table and assumes that you know what she needs and assumes what she needs to give you but never comes on your side, then the whole thing gets messed up. We both have to go, where are we lacking? The feeling of being respected, admired, loved, and desired, those are emotional needs, but we often go, guys don't need that, we're strong. No, I need to feel loved and desired by my wife. I need her to respect and admire me, and I need her to show me that in sexual ways. And we saw that the woman needs non-sexual touch and romance. She needs to know she's valued beyond what she can give. See, if you look at it, it's competing in some ways. But if we don't check our perspective against somebody else's, what will happen is that spousal union will start to become a checklist that we just kind of go through to fix it. And then that gets tiring, and so we both kind of just throw our hands in the air and say, well, it's never going to be fixed. The truth of the matter is you have everything it takes today to check your perspective against hers. The second idea on a successful marriage is recalibrate your affection. In 1 Corinthians 7:3, it says this, let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. This actual translation is the only one that I believe gets the right word in this area right here. A lot of it is sexual nature, and the translations would use other words here, but this writer and this translation says affection. Now let's look at the idea of affection through a definition. A feeling of liking and caring for someone or something, tender attachment. Now, if we got rid of the rest of this definition and we just looked at these 2 words, tender attachment, we can see that that's really recalibrating my affection. When I look at these 2 words, if I take tender away and I just look at attachment, there's this I've got to go after it connotation to that word. But if I go after it, it needs to be in a tender way when I add this word. Tender attachment is harder. Tender attachment is harder than just the act of having sex with one another. Tender attachment is learning what each other love and how they receive love. There's another book by a really smart guy, also named Gary, called The 5 Love Languages. And Gary Chapman walks us through what those 5 love languages are. I'd love to spend some time talking through those with you. Here they are: quality time, physical touch, acts of service, words of affirmation, and receiving gifts. Now, I'd like to unpack these ideas. I want you, before I do that, just to look at the screen and pick out one that if you've taken the test, you already know the answer. But those that have not taken the test, which one do you feel like you receive the love most by? In other words, what's your love language? And some of you can easily pick out that one really, I receive love that way so quickly, and others of you are having a hard time with it. Let me explain each one. Quality time. Now, quality time is interesting, and I struggle with this one the most out of all of them. Quality time is no distractions. I'm putting away my phone, I'm putting away Netflix, I'm putting away everything else, and I'm focusing in on you, the individual. Kids go to bed, everything around me, all the noise of life goes away, and I spend time with you. That's quality time. Quality time has to be quality. It has to be what that person desires. What's quality to them? Some of them, they want you to look in their eyes. Some of them, they want to do activities with you. But it has to be how they receive that quality time. Putt-putt can be something, but if it's a group, it's not quality time. It has to be one-on-one. Physical touch. This one's pretty obvious. But let's get outside of the obvious piece to physical touch. Physical touch is embracing. It's the non-sexual physical touch. It's hugs. It's tender attachment outside of the home. It's just holding a hand and saying, man, I'm with you. Physically, I'm with you right now. It gives the other person this, oh man, I'm connected to them in a non-sexual way. It also has to do with the sexual piece. It has to do more so, though, without the sexual piece. It has more to do with how do they feel when you give them a hug. These people are huggers. They just hug all the time. Acts of service is the next one. And acts of service is really interesting because acts of service is without being asked. See, acts of service, just like all the other love languages, you have to look at the individual and see what's important to them. For some, doing the dishes or doing the laundry or cleaning the house is an acts of service thing. I knew one couple where she felt love from her husband when he would go out and fill her car up with gas. That's an acts of service thing. He was never asked to do it. He just started doing it one day. He realized that it was a big deal to her to get in the car and to have gas in her tank. And so he did it. That's acts of service. He learned what piece of service she needed, and he did that thing. Words of affirmation. See, words of affirmation, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it can be verbal and it can be written, but it has to be specific. We can't just say, you did a good job. It has to be, you did a good job, insert a specific thing they did a good job with. And it needs to be personal. If you generalize it, this person doesn't think you care, doesn't think you love them. And the last one is receiving gifts. Receiving gifts it's not just going to the store, picking out a gift and bringing it home and giving it to that person. Again, it has to be specific. It needs to be a gift that they would cherish. It needs to be a gift that would mean something to them and that you took the time to go get that specific gift because you knew who they were. Now, this is interesting. You're probably elbowing your spouse right now, just going, yeah, kind of having a little conversation about it, which is totally cool. But let me tell you about my wife and I. My love language is words of affirmation. So anything and everything that has to do with affirming me, man, that's love. In fact, I scored the highest in this, and everything else just is non-existent. That's who I am. And often with these love languages, what happens is what you receive is what you easily give off. And that's where the learning comes with recalibrating our affection. Because this is the reality. My wife's is quality time. When we first got married, it was only quality time. I believe it has morphed into acts of service. She hasn't taken the test again, and we got into like a little mini argument last night about the fact that she doesn't think it's acts of service. But it is. Because I can tell the difference when I go wash the dishes or I do something at the home that's not associated with her asking me to do something. When I wash the car or I change the oil or whatever it is and she notices it, it's an act of service that shows her that I love her. She'll still disagree, but the truth is that these two things are competing. And what will happen is as time goes on, we'll sort of move around. It's not always going to be words of affirmation for me because I'll start really going, man, I love when you do that. So what you're going to see as you sort of look at these love languages is that each one, you probably do receive love from that one. But there are predominant ones that pop up that you need to be aware of. You need to know what yours are. You need to know what your spouse's are. This also works in friendships. This also works in co-worker relationships. It's not about intimate love, but it's about loving that person the way they receive the love. You can go buy the book. There's a test you take to find out which ones. But recalibrating our affection looks like learning what that person's love languages are and chasing after those. The third idea tonight, and this one really encompasses everything, and that idea is this: pursue connection. See, when we pursue connection, when we chase after a connection with our spouse, with the person we're trying to relate to, the onus is on us. The pursuit is on us. When I lived in Africa, I watched a lion chase down prey, and it was ugly. I remember watching going like, whoa. There was a pursuit. There was I'm coming after you whether you like it or not. That's not the pursuit we're looking at in marriage. But there is this drive to go, I care about you enough to connect. Yes, we're 10 years in our marriage. Yes, we're 15 years in our marriage, and we've become complacent and comfortable. It's time for me to actually activate on that pursuit of connection. The Bible in Colossians says this: work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. The pursuit of connection is not so your wife or husband will pat you on the back and say, good job, well done. It's so the Father will. See, the writer of Colossians is saying, whatever you do, work at it. And there's this willingness in your heart. Let there be willingness in your heart to chase after that thing. Whatever you choose to do, work willingly at it. Push forward with it. Don't give up. There's a runner, and she's a decorated runner, and her name is Heather Kampf. And she actually in college, she's been running for a long, long time, but there was this one time in college where she was running and something happened. I actually want to show you what that looks like.
Dornan last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship, so they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend, and she's just coming by Fondor now in the home stretch, heading into the bell lap.
Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leaders.
Wow.
Well, she's got fun.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. Can she pull it off? She's moved into third. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming on strong. Dornan all the way. Dornan. Yes, she did it.
Absolutely incredible. We watch her run. She looks like a gazelle in the wild. You hear the commentator in the background actually say, oh, it's okay because her teammate's in first place. There's almost like this excusing what has happened and allowing her off the hook of actually running the race to win. But she doesn't do that. She jumps right up and she starts running. She pursues the goal with all she's got, with no holding back. She embraces the fact, I've fallen, it's time to go even faster and harder after this goal. In an interview, she actually had this to say: not every fall I've had has been quite so epic, but I learned that it's worth getting up every time. Heather has this desire, it's embedded in the way that she thinks. Every time I run, if I fall, if this happens, if something doesn't go according to my plan, I will get up and chase it no matter what happens. There's this willingness to say it's worth getting up every time. Some of you in the room today, in your marriages, in your relationships, have given up. You've fallen on the track and you're just laying there. Some of you have walked off the track and you're no longer running the race that has been given to you. It's a blessing to run this race. What God wants to do today is heal your heart and your mind, and He wants to show you that your marriage is worth getting up for every time. You might have hit a snag. You might have hit something in marriage that you weren't aware of or that you felt was too much, and it was way easier to walk off. But God doesn't want that for you. He wants you to know that your marriage and the relationships you're chasing after are worth getting up for. So I don't know where you are in the room today. I don't know if you believe that if you check your perspective, if you recalibrate your affection, and if you actually pursue connection, that your marriage will be successful. But I'm telling you with all that I am that that's true. But if you're laying down on the track, that's the first step. You're not going to be able to check your perspective if you're laying down on the track. It's time to get up. It's time to say, God, I don't have the strength to run, but I'm going to run anyway. Your marriage is worth fighting for. This church believes in that so much we would preach on it. Don't let this moment pass you. Don't lay on the track. Don't walk off not fighting for what's yours. Fight for what's yours. Let's pray. God, we come before you and we just, in this moment, we ask that you would heal marriages where there's something off, where complacency has set in, where the comfortability has set in. God, that you would realign our hearts with the mission of pursuing connection with our spouse. If we're laying down on the track today of our marriage or our relationship, God, I pray that you would heal our heart enough to say it's worth fighting for. And that we'd walk out of here pursuing new connection with that loved one. We love you, God. We thank you that you pursued connection with us. When there was no reason to, you came down and you pursued that connection, and you've never stopped fighting for us. Maybe walk out in that. In Jesus' name, amen.